unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everyone? It is officially college football season. We are back. Ian Gibson, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very excited. We got week 0 coming right around the corner, and it's that time of year again.
Yes, this is the best time of year. You know, I love the time change. So I love when the days are longer, but when it goes in the opposite direction and days become shorter, it actually is the best time of year because it gets colder. You got baseball World Series postseason. You got NFL starting up. You got hockey starting up. You got NBA basketball starting up. So there's a lot going on in this time of year. But number one in our hearts and your hearts is college football. We love this time of year. We love this sport. This is exactly who we are and what we are. We are a college football media brand. I started this I think it was 2016. So this is technically our 10th season, which is crazy to have done it this many years. We started off, the first year I did it was in my tiny apartment in St. Pete. It was, a Twitter account, a SoundCloud profile, a free app on my iPad, and a $12 Phil Steele magazine. And that was it. That's all the money I spent to try to do what we do now, which is way different because of obviously way more advanced and way more money involved that I've pushed into this. But, from those humble beginnings to now, and, I'd like to say a little bit about who we are because, we don't do it as much as we used to. But, I'd like to say, I played a little bit in high school, was more of a soccer player, but then I ended up playing 3 different semi-pro years with 3 different teams, 2 in Florida and then 1 in California here in Long Beach. And the one in Florida, we won the state title that year. And then, in my education, I graduated from USF. I did a year at Florida State. Yes, I know everyone's probably surprised that I was on campus in Tallahassee. But then went to law school at a school that no longer exists. I still have my law degree. It's back there, so it still exists. But it was a sports law program, and I did 2 internships in 2 college athletic departments. One was Gardner-Webb in Boiling Springs. Shout out to the Bulldogs there. Great experience. And then I was able to come back to USF and do a semester there with an internship. And, I have cut my teeth in athletics, and I haven't done a ton of that since then. But, I took up the mantle of this podcast, this media brand since then. And, I've been all about college football since 2016. I live it and breathe it. I did before, but it was like even more so because of this brand. I wanted to be as well researched as we can. And a little bit to that is Ian's story. And Ian, go ahead, tell your story about what you've done and what you've been along in college football.
Yeah, so I've been watching college football since literally I was 5 years old, maybe. Always, like the sport of football, and something about college football still to me just draws me to it. The tradition, the passion, the rivalries, all that stuff. You just don't get it anywhere else. Obviously, in the state of Florida, it's huge. You have the Gators, the Seminoles, the Hurricanes. So I grew up, and of course the recruiting around here is insane. We have still the best recruits come out of Florida. So college football is just in the fiber of everything when I grew up. I was a part of the Clearwater High video program for the football team. So I met a couple D1 coaches. Truth be told, didn't even know they were D1 coaches until they told me. We were just talking. And, just like you've seen over the past many years have we known each other. I just love talking about college football. I am the king of useless knowledge about it. I could probably tell you every national champion up to 1983. I can tell you every starting quarterback Florida has had since 1990. I figured that one out last year, much to my wife's dismay. Every record they've had, you name it. I probably have either thought of it, remembered it at some point. I'm not going to be like the Wikipedia. I'm not going to flaunt it like, oh, I totally remember this. But I would say to my like historical knowledge, it's better than most. Because as a kid, I just grew up on, college football and history of it and stuff like that. So, yeah, I've loved the sport, and I will continue to love it no matter what it goes through. There's nothing that's going to make me stop watching it on Saturday.
Tell them a little bit about your education and what you did at USF as well.
Yeah, so at USF, what didn't I do there was a better question. I recently graduated. I got my major in mass media video production, and a part of that, I had a couple internships with the ESPN program there. So I did some of the college basketball, baseball games, but I also was hired to help record the practices during Alex Golish's first year. So I got some kind of in-depth knowledge of the program, got pretty close to the player, not like talk to the players, but like physically close to them and, recorded them and all that. I now know Golish has an extremely loud voice. I remember it was the game after they lost to UTSA. I don't think I heard the indoor facility reverberate louder than him yelling at the team, but that was, literally saw that. I was like, okay, going to my camera. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff at USF. I'm a proud alum there. I will continue. USF has always been one of my favorite teams, and I will continue to support them along with the Gators for the rest of my life, pretty much.
And then a little bit about what you've been doing lately with your job.
Yes. So my main job is actually for baseball. I work for the Clearwater Threshers, the single A affiliate of the Philadelphia Phillies. So whatever is, if you've ever come to a Thresher game or been to Baycare Ballpark in Clearwater, because I also am in charge of the spring training when the Phillies are here and that madness. Whatever is on the Jumbotron, on the field, that kind of stuff, that is my responsibility to make sure it is the appropriate thing. It is a very busy, very hectic job, but I do very much enjoy it because I also love baseball too. So similar to this, if, I figured if I'm going to be doing something, do something I'm passionate about and love. But yeah, it's kind of been, it's baseball and college football. It's that time of the year.
Nice. And, like specifically because me and Ian met each other like 7 years ago, and the way we met was he had like Florida Gator like paraphernalia on, and we just started chatting up, and it was like right when I really started pushing to make Hater Radio something. I had just established the website at that time, and we talked, and I just knew right away. I knew he was an intelligent kid. You could just tell he was, on a trajectory. He just was way smarter than most people that I've talked to about college football. And that's honestly why I think me and Ian get along so well, is because, I don't know. It's one of these things where it's like, it's tough because it's like, you want to be like inclusive of everybody, but then it's like sometimes where you feel like with your like knowledge of football, some people aren't up to snuff. There's like the casual fans and the whatever. But, I will say though, on Twitter, like, the fans there are very knowledgeable. And I will say that is definitely something that I've learned over the last 10 years, especially being on Twitter, like how different of a like level playing field Twitter is than like the rest of the world as far as ball knowledge. And I am grateful for that, because I feel like, in my day-to-day life, I always would run into other fans that I felt like were just casual about it, didn't really care as much. But the people that are on Twitter are true fanatics and true, like, truly knowledgeable. And I shout out to all those guys and gals. I love interacting with everybody. It's been a lot of fun. Honestly, the Twitter account has really made me motivate me this far as much as I have, because, there were moments in time where I felt like, I don't know if I was going to continue this, but I knew we had traction with the Twitter account, and it motivated me, and it was like, all right, you got something there, just keep pushing. And, now we're on the verge of 3,000 subscribers, which we might be by the time we hit week 1 next week, the first game. So, 3,000 subscribers in literally exactly 2 years time is kind of an amazing deal, considering, it was from 0 to that. It's, I'm grateful, but let's talk a little bit about it. One thing I wanted to mention before we really get into everything was we cover 4 teams. We cover, like we said, Florida Gators, USF Bulls in Tampa. I live in LA. I've been out here almost a decade, 8 years now. So I cover USC and UCLA as well. We had all of our season previews for all 4 of those teams uploaded on YouTube. So if you want to check those out, they range in length, just depending on topic wise in those season previews. But I feel like we covered enough ground with all 4 of those teams to really give any of you fans a good understanding of what's going to happen coming up this year for those teams. But this show is all about the national scope, which we like to do, which we like to be a part of, which the biggest thing of why I feel like we have success with this show and why we have a good recipe is the fact that me and Ian watch all of these games, all of the big games, and Ian G5 Gibson even watches a lot of those group of 5 games or whatever they're called now, since I don't know, since the Pac-12 doesn't exist, it kind of really messes up the nomenclature, but whatever. We know what it is. It's G5. And that's what Ian's nickname is going to be here going out. G5 Gibson. So, no, Ian watches those games. He knows all of those teams very well, probably better than any other national personality I see out there. And I will watch, the condensed game, the 22-minute recaps of all of the big games that we go through that all have playoff implications. So that's 12 to 15 games on Sunday morning. I wake up early. I wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I will bust my butt to watch every recap. So I know what these teams actually look like. I'm not watching a minute or 2 highlight reel. No, I'm watching the entire game basically condensed so that I know what we're talking about. I don't like just guessing on what teams are doing. I like to actually know. And and I feel like with our show, that is how you guys will be able to digest the information, is that you can see it from us. You don't have to watch all of the recaps, because it is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It takes 6 hours each of my Sunday for, 14 weeks out of the year to do it. It's a tough job because, there is a ton of work, but I like doing it. I love college football, and I know that Ian loves it too. So we try to give you guys the information so you don't have to spend your whole Sunday mornings watching it. All you have to do on Sunday and Wednesdays, tune in at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific on YouTube and all the social media formats, and we will give you all the information you need. We will break down this for you so you guys don't have to watch it. And with that being said, let's break into it. So this is our college football season preview show. So Ian, I want to off the bat, who do you feel right now is the narrative of all of college football right now? Who is what is the story that's standing out to you the most, that you out of all you've digested, all the other shows, all the other articles you've read? What do you feel is the biggest story coming into the 2025 season?
I would say it would be, ironically, the guys who are on the cover of College Football 26. It would be the dynamic of Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith returning this year, and how that has impacted the trajectory of both Alabama and Ohio State. Because both teams did lose, like Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Ohio State, won the national title, and then everybody graduated. But those were two of the best players on those teams that are staying, and that entice more and more transfers to come over to Ohio State and Alabama. And now the narratives are too, is that how is Ohio State going to keep this trend going into this season? And also, can Alabama, with Kalen DeBoer after, and this shows you a spoiled fan base, a disappointing 9-win season.
Yeah.
Would kill for that as a Gator fan in the last couple of years. Because the thing is with the SEC scheduling, it has been brutally difficult for a lot of teams, and Bama, Georgia, Florida, they're no exception. Bama's got to go on the road to Georgia and LSU this year right off the jump, and then they got to play Tennessee at home, which has had their number. So those are like games for Bama that is going to really dictate how are we looking with Kalen DeBoer in year 2. Now, of course, unfortunately, the comparison is going to be, well, Nick Saban went to the SEC championship in year 2 and only had one loss in the, whole, not counting the bowl game. He only had one loss and was to the Gators that year. So we should expect the same thing. I don't know about that, but I would say that's the biggest storyline that I have seen, is just those two programs going into it for very different reasons, centering around the wide receiver group. Another one I wanted to mention, this honestly is one of the bigger ones, and it's the one everybody's talking about. It's Penn State. This is the year. They have absolutely, I have seen, that was the one consistent thing from watching previews and everything, was when they asked what's the biggest thing you're looking for this year, all of them said it's Penn State has to win this year. They cannot go, again, you could call it being spoiled, but the expectation is Penn State has to make that next jump. You cannot lose another one possession game in the playoff. You cannot lose, another close game to these teams that are at the top of the Big Ten. You have got to take that step, because this is the best team James Franklin has ever had at Penn State in all his time here. So there are no more excuses for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah. Only correction. The Alabama LSU game is in it's in Tuscaloosa. But
it is in Tuscaloosa. Okay.
Yeah. No, but it's no big deal. I wasn't for sure, because I remembered last year Milroe running wild against LSU, and I was almost positive I remember it was in LSU. But so yes, I agree with both those points. I think those are the biggest programs. I know it looks like with Georgia, they might take a step back because of, Gunnar Stockton. I don't know how much people have faith in him. I think the Georgia fans really like this guy. I'm not sold on him yet. He had one big pass play in the Notre Dame game, and the rest of that game was like kind of whatever. So, I think those stats are a little skewed there. You got to take the whole thing to account, but I think he was largely the reason they didn't beat Notre Dame. I think if there was a healthy Carson Beck, they probably would have had a chance. I rewatched a little bit of the Alabama-Georgia game where Alabama went up big and Georgia came back last year. And as much as Carson Beck, whatever, he still was a big reason why they probably should have won that game against Alabama. And, and the other thing we haven't talked about is some of the Florida State and Miami stuff. Again, Miami, and I counter that because it's Beck also struggled in a lot of those games as well. He had 3 interceptions against Florida. And so he had some moments where he looked lost and struggled. Again, the Miami fans point to the struggles that the Georgia offense had. The receivers had number 1 in drops all of last year in Power 4. and the offensive line couldn't get a push, and they couldn't run the ball at all. I mean, yeah, I mean Georgia. I mean, at this point, like I know Miami's line has become one of the better ones in the country, but Georgia's been one of the better lines the last like better part of a decade. I don't know if it was more of like maybe Mike Bobo struggling at Georgia, which, a lot of Georgia fans feel that way. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that that's what seems to be some of the problem is his play calling. Again, like I said, Beck struggled, whatever. Now he's at Miami. I think the biggest problem with Miami coming into this year is their lack of experience with their pass catchers. I think it was like the number is like 6 of their top 8 pass catchers are gone from last year. And so that's a huge hole to fill. That's basically your starting 4 receivers and Damian Martinez and the tight end Arroyo. So that's a massive gap. I mean, I know they have some talent there. I'm not denying that. Cristobal has recruited pretty decently, not great, but decently. Again, the schedule kind of is nice for them. They don't have, the craziest hard of schedules. What is it? I'm going to look at it real quick just to verify. I'm almost positive they don't play. Yeah, they don't play Clemson, and their hardest game is Florida, Notre Dame, and SMU, and maybe that Syracuse game. And depending on how Pittsburgh does, I mean, late in the year in the freezing cold in Pittsburgh is going to be a difficult game for Miami.
They got bit in 2016 when they were really on the road to
No, you're right.
Playoff bid, and
they did, because if they'd have won that game, they would have been in the playoff probably. So
yeah,
it really kind of screwed the pooch there. But
that's my thing with Miami. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That was my thing with Miami. There is a lot of hype with them. There usually is, but it's one of those things with me. It's like they just haven't proven it. Because last year, I really thought, I was like, okay, yeah, they're not looking good, but they're finding ways to win. And if they just keep winning, like they'll probably lose the ACC championship, or maybe they'll win it by 1 score, but they'll go to the playoff. They'll finally go to the playoff. And then they, lose to Tech, and then they lose to Syracuse, which were 2 inexcusable losses because they were just too busy playing with fire. They were better than most of those teams on that schedule, and they still found a way to lose. It's the very frustrating thing with Miami the last, I don't know, since 2001. They have had these really good teams that just find ways to not get the job done. It's literally like the reverse of what they were in the 80s and 90s. They would always be the team that would rise up against the top 10. And now it's as soon as like they play some scrub team, they just like can't even take a freaking knee and win and just salt it away. But that's my 2 cents on Miami. I'm not really buying the hype because they haven't proven it to me so far in the past 20 years.
I mean, okay, like a deep dive into Miami, like think about it. Howard Schnellenberger and Jimmy Johnson are, especially Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson is considered one of the best football coaches ever, like in like all of the sport. So like, I don't know. It does help when you have good coaching. Urban Meyer is a Hall of Famer. Steve Spurrier is a Hall of Famer. Bobby Bowden is a Hall of Famer. Like when you have good coaches, you're going to win. And I just think that Miami has not had good coaching in a long time. And I don't know with Cristobal. I really don't know. Like, is his ceiling 10 wins? Like, is this as good as it's going to get? Yeah. And, like, truth be told, I don't know. I don't know if he's capable of going, 12-0, winning the conference, and then, winning games in the playoffs. I don't know if they're good enough. There are holes on this specific team, that I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think they're still on a good trajectory, but which is funny because that meme. Have you ever seen that meme?
Yeah.
Of Cristobal, and he like smacks the table. Like,
yeah.
oh gosh, I love that one. It's so funny. No, this team is flawed. I think their schedule is somewhat manageable outside of the big games. And then, you know, who knows? It could work out. But again, they haven't developed a quarterback. They've relied on the transfer portal the last like 3-4 years because it goes all the way back to Derek King.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like they've just had no one in the pipeline. And if I were like anyone that's recruited as a quarterback to Miami, like I'd have no hope of even starting. I'd be like, no, he's just going to bring in a transfer. That's just what they do. They don't even like bother playing someone that has any like no experience. So it's like, I don't know why anyone would want to come to Miami for that reason. And he really hasn't developed outside of that as well, because when he was at Oregon, Justin Herbert, I believe, was already there. And so like he was kind of developed before he got there. And then just like, obviously Herbert's an amazing NFL quarterback. So like, I don't know. Let's move on to another topic. Let's broach the I guess Florida State a little bit, since we haven't talked about it yet. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I feel like they're going to struggle pretty bad this year. Starting off the season with a game against Alabama is not the way they want. After going 2-10 last year to, really poop the bed like that guy with the red Solo cup.
Yeah.
Refused to eat the poop. But no, incoming Gus Malzahn, in comes Thomas Castellanos. I don't see it. I just don't. I'm not like sold on Deuce Robinson or Squirrel White. I thought they were like kind of, like number 3 and 4 options at the last teams they were at. Now they're supposed to be number 1 and number 2. And like, I don't know, like, the defense has to turn around. The defense was terrible. That was the last thing I wanted to mention about Miami. Was the thing that may help them this year is the fact that they have a new defensive coordinator, the guy from Minnesota, but we'll see. But then back to Florida State. So Florida State, they have a new defensive coordinator, the guy from Nebraska, who did quite well there while he was at Nebraska. I just don't see it. I don't see more than 7 wins at Florida State. And honestly, it's probably like more than likely a 6-6, 5-7 team. But what are your thoughts on Florida State?
Yeah, I agree. The thing is with Norvell, every year it's been, hitting the roulette wheel with the transfer portal. Sometimes it hits like in 2023, and sometimes you bet it all on black and it comes up red like it was last year. But he had to, hit the roulette wheel again. A lot of transfers went out. So for Florida State, I don't think there's a lot of Gator fans are like, oh, they're going to go 2-10 again. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see them because this schedule, then again, last year was too, but this one, they should be, able to get more wins because obviously you start the year against Alabama, not ideal, but you are at home and you can finally put the stadium at full capacity, which it wasn't even able to last year. So that's worth something. But then they have, they play East Texas A&M, I believe. Yeah. And then, then they play Kent State. And then they're on the ACC schedule. And the ACC schedule is pretty favorable to them. Yeah. Because I do think they're better than Virginia. I do think they're better than Stanford. I know they play Wake. I think they're better than them. So that's, 3 wins right there. And then, they play Stanford. They can beat Stanford. And then there's toss-up games like Pitt and maybe NC State, maybe. But really the big one, I would say, to really get a gauge on how Florida State is going to be, it's kind of the same thing I talked about with Florida, is the Miami game. You, as Mike Norvell, going into this season, you have had one season where you were like above. Actually, you've had 2 years where you were above 500, and then you come crashing down to 2-10. You cannot go have Miami come into Doak Campbell Stadium and have them blow you out again. If obviously a win would be fantastic, but you absolutely cannot lose by more than 2 scores again, because you are now showing that you are now again the third best team in Florida, and that is much worse than being the third best team in the ACC, because that is a lot harder to sell on the recruiting trail than it is the other way around. So for Florida State, I feel like with that schedule, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they made a bowl. I would expect them to make a bowl game, but I'm not sure about anything more than that. But, we're going to see, obviously they play against Alabama. We're going to see how the team reacts to that. And then they have the layup games with those 2 squads. I think, obviously, and they play Miami early enough in the year to really see what this team is made of. Because, obviously, you have to get up and ready for that one, because it's a rivalry game. They're top 10 in the nation, and they're coming to your house. What are you going to do about it?
The funny thing is, over the last several years, I've actually been pretty good at like predicting FSU's like their win-loss record. I don't know how. I just like when they're bad, I'm like good to like gauge how many games they're going to lose. The only times that I've like not been able to figure it out is the years that they've been good, and that was really just 23 and 22. Like outside of those years, I've actually like since I've been doing this show, I've been really good at like figuring out how many games they were going to lose. So I'm just going to look at it like off the cuff. Alabama loss, Miami loss, Pittsburgh. I don't know. Like I don't know how good Pitt is. I know they were like flirting with being a good team last year and kind of fell apart. So that's a toss-up as of right now. Stanford is in California. So, like, that's a long trip for them. West Coast game. Depending on what time that game is, it could be really late or whatever. Could really affect them as far as, like, the sleepiness of the game, if it's really early or whatever. Long travel does affect people in a lot of ways. So that may be a toss-up, depending on how Stanford is, too, because I know they're not very good. But Clemson loss. Va-Tech, I don't know. Va-Tech, was almost able to beat Miami in Miami last year. Mm-hmm. And then NC State, they've always had trouble at NC State, like since the 90s. Like for literally like 30 years, Florida State has just struggled to play NC State for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's just one of those teams that like has their number for some reason. So I might consider that a loss. And Florida, more than likely a loss, because if Florida's rolling at that point, they're probably going to steamroll them. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 losses at minimum, with the Pitt and Stanford and Va-Tech games being toss-ups. So, like I said, 7-5 is their ceiling. So, like, that is bowl eligibility, which is more successful than they were last year, which was, they barely beat Cal last year. And the other team they beat was a FCS team. So they only really had one Power 4 victory last year, which is, that's on the level of what USF was during the Jeff Scott era. Like, it's pathetic. But let's move on to some other topics. Let's broach. What do you think some of the let's let's do conference championship games. Let's do that, and then we'll do Heisman. So, all right. So, as far as conference champions, who do you feel like is going to make it to Charlotte for ACC championship game?
I feel like for the ACC, I'm going to take Clemson. Clemson, I guess as a spoiler, I already have them as like one of my playoff teams. And then I honestly feel like, man, if I had to take a pick, I know everybody is high on Miami, but I honestly think SMU can run it back again. I seriously think SMU, especially with their schedule, can, if they beat Miami, can go back to Charlotte. So my prediction was a repeat of the last year's game, and I would have Clemson winning that one again. But I would say Clemson would win the ACC for me.
Yeah, the only difference I have is I think that Georgia Tech might sneak in there. And I like what Brent Key has been doing at Tech. It really goes a long way if you have an alum as your head coach, because they have passion for the university that, you know, it just there is a huge thing with that. You know, you saw it with Steve Spurrier, you know, you see it with Kirby Smart, you know, even Deshaun Foster at UCLA. I feel like it's the right move. And, you know, programs, the schools want to have an alum because they know how much it, like, there's just synergy there. There's a lot of synergy that helps everything. So I like what Georgia Tech is doing. I know that their schedule is, let me see real quick. Yeah, they don't play Clemson. Oh, they play Clemson. They don't play Miami, and they don't play Florida State, and they don't play SMU. So they don't play like any of the top dogs outside of Clemson. So Georgia Tech, even if they lose to Clemson in the season, they still have a shot of getting back to Charlotte. So I like Georgia Tech a lot. I've liked Haynes King in this offense. I think he runs it well. And, you know, the defense has really been the difference maker with Georgia Tech. They've really kept them in most of their games because of how good the defense has been. Okay, moving on to Big Ten. I think I know where you're heading with this one, and I'll jump into it. So I got Penn State over Ohio State. I think these are the two best teams. I think outside of that, you've got like Indiana and Illinois that are going to be threatening. But I just think these two have the most right now. They have the most juice. And I think I'm going to have Penn State over Ohio State in that championship game. What do you got?
Yeah, I have the same matchup, but flipped. I do think Ohio State wins the Big Ten again. I just, with the talent they have and the speed on both the secondary and the wide receiver core, I don't see just Penn State handling that. They haven't handled it for over 10 years. Yeah. Like I said, I've always said this, you got to prove me wrong. But I'm going to take the Buckeyes winning the Big Ten and beating Penn State.
The reason why I have Penn State over Ohio State in this championship game is because Jim Knowles, man. Jim Knowles has been the best defensive coordinator in the country for the last, like, at least 5 years. He had a great defense at Oklahoma State. He had a great defense at Ohio State. He's going to do the same thing at Penn State. Like, he is the defensive coordinator. There is no one better than this guy. And I don't know why Ohio State let him go. I don't know. There was contract negotiations that fell apart, whatever reason. But this guy is the guy, and he's the reason why defenses are as good as they are where he's at. So that's going to put Penn State over the top. They already have had a really good defense the last several years. This will be even better than they've been. And then you add on top the OC. What's the OC's name again?
For Penn State, it's shoot.
It's like a I can't remember his name, but he was at Kansas. I always forget his name because it's like a different sounding name. It's like Oswalski. What?
Kalinke,
Something like that.
Andy?
Yeah. It's like something
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's something like different. You're like, oh yeah. But he's been great there so far. The only thing I'll caveat my pick with Penn State is really Drew Allar, because I have not been the biggest fan of his. He really has turtled in these big games, and this is his last chance in college to really prove himself. He allegedly is going to be, a big prospect for the NFL. I don't see it. I guess they're just enamored with his intangibles and not with actually the tape against teams, but whatever. I think that'll be their only fault. The rest of the team has gotten better. I think they've gotten some weapons at wide receiver. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are still there running back wise, so they'll be able to run the ball extremely well. I think not having Tyler Warren from last year is going to be a huge detriment because he was their, all-world gadget tight end. But I still like Penn State here. I think Ohio State with Julian Sand coming in, we'll see. He has a lot of talent. He more than likely will do well in that offense because they've really have been quite a machine over there the last several years with Ryan Day and company. And then Hartline, the wide receiver coach, you got Jeremiah Smith and, a load of wide receivers there. So they're going to be throwing the ball, especially with the talent they have. So I don't know. I just like Penn State more overall. I just feel like you said, I feel like if this is going to be the year, this has to be the year. Like there's no excuses anymore. Like you cannot, if you don't make it this year, then I don't think James Franklin will ever do it. So let's move on to Big 12. Who do you got in Big 12?
I have Kansas State defeating Texas Tech in the Big 12 title. Now, here's the thing. The Big 12 is likely themselves going to throw a hand grenade in this prediction because none of us said Arizona State last year.
Yes, exactly.
So for my money's worth, I got Kansas State defeating Texas Tech.
I actually love that, and I wish I had chosen Kansas State. I don't know. I just feel like this Iowa State team is poised to get back there again, and I feel like with Rocco Becht, they can do it. But I do love Avery Johnson at Kansas State, and I do love that team. They are very solid. They do a lot of things very well, and I think they were, on the verge last year, and I think this might be the payoff year. So I'm not like denying them. I think they're like right there on the verge as well. But again, I'm with you with Texas Tech. I feel like Texas Tech is loading up with talent. They have a bunch of good playmakers there already. I think I saw that they averaged like 36 points a game last year on offense. The problem is they allowed like 34 points a game. So, hopefully the defense gets better and then they have a real shot of really beating up some of these really good teams. So, I got Iowa State over Texas Tech as well. Let's move on to the big bad. It just means more SEC. This is an interesting choice. And then, it's something that like has been the sexy pick is Oklahoma. I don't have Oklahoma winning it, but I have Oklahoma getting there, and I have Alabama beating them. And so it's going to be Alabama over Oklahoma in Atlanta. This Oklahoma team, I think a lot of people are starting to really notice because, one, they got John Mateer from Washington State, and they also got his quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. So, this kid is going to have the same system that he had 44 touchdowns on the ground and through the air last year combined. So he is going to be capable of putting up numbers with this Oklahoma team. Brent Venables has gotten the defense in pretty good shape over the last couple of years since he's been there. I think this is a big year for them because if they don't make the next step, Venables might be out the door. But again, Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, I know we talked about it earlier. I think Ty Simpson is capable. I think, he's been waiting his turn. They'll get a test against Florida State, which they should win easily. And then they'll have the Wisconsin game. And then they play Georgia. So it's like they're going to be tested early to see if this is a real team or not. I think Alabama has what it takes. And I think Alabama is going to be reigning supreme in Atlanta. What are your thoughts?
So I have Alabama going to the title, but I have the other side of the Red River, Texas. And I've got Texas winning the SEC. I think it'll be Alabama and Texas. The reason honestly, I think Texas is going to go. But picking the other team was tough.
Yeah.
But when I looked at the schedules, I was like, there's more games Alabama could win than Georgia, I would say, because Bama and Georgia are going to play each other. So pretty much everyone's that. It might be the ticket in. And honestly, it was a toss-up between Bama and Georgia. And there were some, South Carolina was in there too, and Florida, I guess. But I looked at the schedule and I was like, I see Bama winning these games on this schedule more than Georgia. So I'm going to say Texas defeats Bama.
What do you feel about LSU?
Again, there's a lot of game now. Again, Brian Kelly's going to have to prove me wrong. But that schedule, I know it doesn't matter because it's a non-conference game. But that Clemson game's kind of going to be a tone setter. But they got to go at the Grove at Ole Miss. Then they play South Carolina. Now that's in Death Valley, but they barely beat them. Then they got to, like you mentioned, go to Bama. They got to go into Tuscaloosa, and then they end the year at Norman. So it's not
that's
like I said.
I did notice that when I looked today, when I was like trying to make this pick, I was like, that LSU schedule is really tough, and like I like a lot of what they have. Nussmeier is definitely going to play in the NFL, and like there's a lot to like there, but then it's like, man, they're just I don't not see 3 losses. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm like in my mind, I envision like around 3 losses for them, and that just kind of kills any hope of going to Atlanta. But that doesn't cut out a chance of getting to the playoff, which, if they're 9-3 with that schedule, I think they get in. Just like Florida, we've talked about this, is 9-3. They more likely get in as well. So we'll see. But do you have any more thoughts on SEC before we move on?
No, I do have my picks for the Group of 5 conference champions. If you want, I can go through those real quick.
Yeah, let's do American, and then you'll do the rest because I didn't do the rest. I just did American. I'll give my American, and then you jump in and do the rest. So I have Memphis over our boys and Alex Golish, USF. So maybe this is the first time ever we finally get to a championship game. I mean, I would hope after all these years and all this buildup, we can finally do it. My prediction is 10-2. Losing 2 of the 3 of the tough non-conference games, and then going into and going through that schedule. I think USF beats Memphis in the regular season, but loses to Memphis in the conference championship game, which that game would be in Tampa. So that would be a shame if they lost that game. But Ian, your thoughts?
So with my choice, I picked Memphis, but I did have USF missing out. And I had them beating Tulane. The amount of, I understand Tulane, they lost a lot of starters.
Yeah.
But I feel like the ones they got in would be good enough to fill in the roles, and they'll pick up where they were. But I just feel like Memphis, more complete. They didn't lose as much. Now, the thing with USF, I really did want to pick them because out of everybody in the AAC, they were the ones that had the most returning starters.
Yeah.
But I had to pick. I was with you. I was like, I feel like Memphis it's either going to be Memphis or Tulane for those 2.
Okay. Give me the rest of your Group of 5.
Yes. So we're going to start Conference USA. I feel like Liberty takes it back from Jacksonville State, but I got Liberty beating La Tech. I think La Tech can make a surprise run there. Sunbelt, Texas State and how explosive that offense was.
Yeah.
I feel like they can do it again, and they will beat Arkansas State. And then in the MAC, I have Toledo, who has not had a losing season in over 20 years. Toledo beats Buffalo. So really rough time for anybody living in Buffalo. Sorry.
Okay, those are three. What's is there one more?
Conference USA, Sun Belt, MAC,
Mountain West, right?
Doesn't Mountain West. Oh yeah, Mountain West. Yeah. Where did I have that one? Act surprise. I had Boise State beating UNLV, but I did say I put in the note here by a field goal. I honestly feel like UNLV could flip each way.
I mean, Dan Mullen, this is the perfect job for Mullen because it's like, there are like no expectations at UNLV. Yeah. I know they've done well the last several years, but like, there's not like, it hasn't been a prestigious program over its history. So like, he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to recruit like he did at Florida, where it was, such a downfall of his tenure there. And so like, when he's at UNLV, all he has to do is focus on play calling, which he is one of the best, like ever. Like he is like when he was at his like peak at Florida in 2020, they were just all over the field. Like it was so creative and like, just, man, I honestly envision UNLV doing very well, and it'll probably end up resulting in him getting a bigger job, but he should probably just stay there because I feel like UNLV was like the perfect size program for him. It's like literally like if he's just there, he can dominate. And I know, aren't they moving to the Pac-12? Like I know there's like a bunch of teams.
I know any team that has a state in their name is moving to the Pac-12. Did UNLV part of that group?
Yeah, I don't know if they are, but there are a lot of teams going to the Pac-12 next year. So that conference is not dead yet. So, it's getting resurrected a little bit there, but it won't be a Power 5 conference anymore. But good for Oregon State and Washington State, because I really felt bad for them when they got left holding the bag there. Okay, we did all of those. Let's do Heisman talk, then we'll do playoff, and then we'll jump into week 0. So Heisman, I want to hear your thoughts on the Heisman candidates.
So my 4 candidates here, obviously the 2 obvious ones, as I mentioned, Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, 2 of the best receivers in the nation, and really can show that they can carry the team, especially Ryan Williams with their playmaking ability. And Jeremiah Smith is like, scouts are saying it, and it is true. If he was draft eligible, he might have been a top 5 pick last year.
Yeah, I agree.
And he has every opportunity to put up, 1 billion more yards and touchdowns this year. Because that's the thing with Ohio State. Yeah, having a quarterback is great, but they've always been a wide receiver factory. So it really doesn't matter who's throwing the ball. They'll find a way to catch it. And I feel like Jeremiah Smith will do that. And I feel like Jeremiah Love will be the best running back in the nation for Notre Dame. Especially with that offensive line, I feel like he'll be able to get a lot of yards and touchdowns, and they're really going to lean on him. And quarterback-wise, I had Cade Klubnik going to New York. He's the most experienced. He really had a great year last year, and, he's really showing how good he was out of high school and why he was so touted. And he's exceeding a lot of expectations even for him. So those were my top 4 Heisman guys. Jeremiah Love, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, and Cade Klubnik.
No Arch Manning?
I'm not going to buy the hype yet, but the other thing is that I'm looking at players, not teams.
Yeah.
Manning has a great team around him.
Yeah.
But I feel like how dependent are they going to be on him? That's what I want to see.
I feel the same way, but it's also a case of where it's like the number 1 team and the best player or the quarterback on that team is usually in New York. Like that's like just they're synonymous. So I kind of think he's like a default candidate just because of that, even if his numbers are not that great. Like, I mean, you look at Stetson Bennett, like his numbers weren't that great, and he was a candidate somehow. And I will say Jeremiah Smith, definitely 100%. I feel like he's going to be there. I feel like Nussmeier is someone I feel like they're going to have to put up a lot of points, and I feel like he's capable. I think he can do it. So I think he's going to be there. So we got Nussmeier, Jeremiah Smith, Arch Manning, and then possibly 2 outsiders. I feel like Lenoris Sellers will be there because they need him to do big. If he doesn't do well, then they will not have a good year. So, like, I feel like he's the engine, and if he pushes them further, they could get to 9-3, 10-2, and get into the playoff, and he would be the reason. And I feel like he can get them there. And then my dark horse, you know, I have Oklahoma in the SEC championship game. John Mateer, I'm telling you, this kid is going to put up numbers again. And if they're doing extremely well, you know, look out. So he's definitely got a chance there. So right now I got probably Mateer and Sellers, the 4 and 5, Nussmeier 3, Arch probably 2, and then Jeremiah Smith as the winner. Okay. Last thing we wanted to do was talk about, I'm not going to do all playoff teams because 12 is quite a big number, but let's do like your 4 top teams, like your final 4. Who are your final 4?
My final 4 is Texas, Ohio State, Clemson, and Kansas State.
Wow. And I honestly, I do like Kansas State a lot. I'm very like high on them. I was high on them last year, and I feel like they're a team that does not get like any love from anyone. Like, you don't hear anything about them, and they're a really good team, and it is a shame. But no, those are solid picks. Ohio State, Clemson, and what was the third one?
Ohio State, Clemson, and Texas.
Texas, yeah, those are
up
there.
Order. It was just like,
yeah, and those make sense. Those 3 definitely make sense, and I think Kansas State, if they can get on a roll and they do quite well, they have a chance. I think my final 4 is probably going to be Penn State, probably Clemson. I think Texas has been on a roll, so we'll see. Maybe they even sneak in. If they don't get in the SEC championship game, they somehow sneak in as an at-large and then get on a run. And then if I could have like a sneaky team, maybe a sneaky team is like Notre Dame, which we haven't even talked about.
Yeah.
You know, and it's definitely possible because they did it last year. They have a lot of guys back. Their defense is really good. Jeremiah Love. Their quarterback situation got figured out on Monday. So CJ Carr is the starter. So we'll see. I think my like surprise teams, I think Oklahoma is there. I know I've been talking about it. I think they're one outside of that. I think also with, you know, I'm trying to think like a group of 5 team. I think UNLV could be a surprise team that if they do really well, they could get on a run and maybe make it to the playoff. And, you know, Dan Mullen is just, who knows what he could do in that kind of capability, scheming up against those defenses. You know, I think as far as maybe another sleeper, maybe it might even be LSU, because even though they have a hard schedule, they have a lot of talent and they're putting a lot into this year. They put a lot of transfers in there. You know, Indiana, we haven't even talked about, but like, you know, they have done quite well. And I know we haven't talked much about USC as well, but there's someone that really, you know, with D'Anton Lynn coming back DC wise, could really put some pressure on teams this year. You know, I think they could look really good on offense. And I think, you know, the defense is basically going to be really stout. So, you know, I don't know. As far as sleepers, I think I've got like probably Oklahoma, maybe UNLV, USC, and then LSU. And then who do you got for sleepers in the playoff?
So I have I'm similar one. I thought like UNLV could make some noise. And other ones I said obviously, it's not much of a sleeper, but teams like Boise State and Memphis, if they win their conference, they'll be in. SMU, nobody's really been talking about how they could make a trip back. But the three that I thought could really, like, if they take this step, one of them takes the step, can really make some noise, is Nebraska with that schedule could legit, and if Dylan Raiola continues his development, can legit make a claim for heading to the playoff.
Oh, 100%.
And my other one, also in the Big Ten, if Bryce Underwood goes nuts as a freshman at Michigan, because we know the defense is going to be fine at Michigan.
Yeah.
Let's just say hypothetically, they go on a run and they beat Ohio State again. Tell them you're not going to the playoff. Because here's the thing. With the Michigan-Ohio State thing, that was the worst team Michigan had against Ohio State the past 5 years. And Ohio State, that was their best team they had, and they still lost. Now they have to go to Ann Arbor with a better team. Regardless, like, the Michigan team will be better. Yeah. But we're going to see how well it's going to be. Now, again, this is just sleeper. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I could be like, I could see that. And this was the other one. When I was doing the homework and doing my conference champion ones, I looked at it and I went, oh my God, if this team makes the playoff, everybody's going to lose their mind because of their schedule. If Liberty goes undefeated and blows out every team, I am not kidding. If Liberty goes undefeated with that schedule, they don't play anybody, but they would be, by record, the best group of 5 conference champion. They would have to get in.
You're right.
Easily put 50 points on every team on their schedule and go undefeated, win their conference. They would be the best because all the other conference teams, like, I feel like Memphis may lose a game or two. Even if Tulane wins, they would. Same, Boise State has to play Notre Dame. Yeah. That's a tough call. If Liberty goes undefeated, blows out every team, I'd be like, oh, God, they might make it. And everybody's going to lose their mind. A lot of SEC teams will, like, be burning stuff down. But those are my 3. And honestly, I'm for the anarchist one. I would lose my mind. I would be mad, but I would also be, like, having a great time, like dancing in the flames with Liberty. No pun intended.
Ian, this is the clip that I'm posting on our shorts for this show.
I can't wait for them to go like 3-9 now.
I love it. And that's the great thing about the season predictions is, like, you definitely don't know what is going to happen because most people had Florida State as a top 10 team last year. They were ranked inside the top 10 to start the year, and then they lost 10 games. So it's like, you honestly don't know. Anything is possible in the sport. Even before the season, Nick Saban was saying great things about Florida State, and they just were terrible. So it's like, you honestly don't know until games are played. And it's great that we get these games. And speaking of those games, let's get into week 0 here. So we'll get into our predictions. And the slate is not much. There's more games than this, but these are the ones that we wanted to talk about because these are the main players in these games that have, like, potential playoff implications. And that's a lot of what we will do is the games that we talk about are a lot of ones with playoff implications. The group of 5 games we'll talk about will be ones that will include some of the better group of 5 teams. So we'll have an understanding of playoff scenarios. Okay, let's jump off. This game I am super excited about. I've been talking about this all offseason. Kansas State, Iowa State in Dublin, Ireland. This is a massive game to start the year. Like, these 2 teams could be playing each other in the Big 12 championship game 4 months from now. And we get this this is the first everything. Like, this is the start of the whole season. And we get this. Like, this is like basically like a, playoff game just to start off. And it's like, I don't think people realize it. It's going to be a really good game. I feel like it's going to be close between the two. Avery Johnson, Rocco Beck, two amazing quarterbacks. I honestly, because it is the beginning of the year, I don't really have a gauge on how these two teams will do. I won't really know until like weeks into the season, but this is what you have to do with these first games. You just have to blindly guess. And I'm going to say Iowa State wins it. They're my pick for the Big 12 championship right now. I'm going to say it's going to be close. And I want Kansas State to win because I feel like there's something about this team that there's something there. But I got Iowa State winning. I'm going to say it's going to be a close one, like a 31-28 game. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, for this one, with you, I'm really excited because it's a top 25 matchup. It's a rivalry game. It's Farmageddon. One of the best names for a rivalry ever. And we start off the season right. That is legit what the rivalry is called. Is Farmageddon. It's awesome. I remember in the old NCAA games, you could play like rivalry games, and when you went to Iowa State, K-State, and I still in the new one, it just is called Farmageddon. And I was like, that is perfect,
dude. That is ridiculous.
The best thing ever. Regardless, yeah, I think this game is going to be really good and it's going to be really close. It might be, both have very balanced attacks, but it really does come down to the quarterback position. The last three matchups have all been decided by one score. Iowa State won last year 29-21, and obviously 2-point conversion makes it a one score. And then they won by a touchdown in Manhattan the year before. And I think K-State only won by a point 3 years ago. On the other side, I said K-State was my Big 12 champion. So I think with Avery Johnson and them playing keep away from Iowa State, they find a way to get enough stops on Iowa State's offense to take advantage of. I think it's going to be a possession game, and I think K-State will have the ball longer, and I think they'll be able to pull out the win. I'm going to go close. I'm going to go with like a 28-24 win for the Wildcats.
Yeah, it's going to be close. Like these are two of the top tier teams in the Big 12, and it's such a man. I'm so excited. I really am. I'm like, and I'm not even going to be able to watch most of it because I'm going to be heading to the airport, heading to Cancun. So like, I'm not even going to be able to pay attention to it too much. But man, this is exciting. This is such a great way to start the year. It's a treat for all of us. And let's look at the rest of the slate and we'll call it a day. Idaho State, UNLV. I'm just looking forward to how many points UNLV is going to score. I'm going to say they score like 61 and Idaho State scores like 14. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, I think it'll be the same thing. I think, Mullen will be able to put the air raid attack on. They're going to be using two quarterbacks. They're going to figure out who the starter is. But I feel like I'm going to go UNLV. They'll win like, let's go like 45-14.
Yeah, and this next one coming up, it's a sneaky team. Like, is Kansas going to be good? Is Jalen Daniels? He's still there, right, at Kansas?
Yes,
because he's been hurt the last several years, so I think he still has eligibility. So like this Kansas team could be good. Well, they're just kind of under the radar. So and considering they just got like a $350 million endowment to their athletic department, there's a lot of movement there. They like refurbished the stadium. They've got some like better stancha there. So they're putting money into the football program, and that coach there is a good coach. What's his name? God, I forget his name. But this Kansas team may surprise people. But this is a good matchup. Fresno State has always been a real frisky group of five team that plays teams really well. This is a good matchup. I think Kansas wins. I'm going to say like a 34-20 game. What do you got?
Yeah. Lance Leopold was
Lance Leopold. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like now Fresno State has been a really sticky team. They were really tough out against UCLA. They, were really tough against Air Force and Hawaii in those last games last year. I feel like Fresno State can actually make it close. but I think Kansas enough. I just think they got more talent. Kansas wins. I don't think it's going to be like by a lot of scores. I think Kansas might win ugly. I'll go with like a 28-17 win for the Jayhawks.
Last one, Stanford, Hawaii. I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, obviously the good news for Hawaii, because there's been a lot of talk about whether they might, fold the program really because of the stadium problems and all that. But I think they just announced that they're rebuilding or making a new Aloha Stadium. So that is great to hear because Hawaii, so many great memories from the 2000s from that program. And, obviously you don't want to see any program like just flat out die. But with Hawaii and Stanford, I mean, obviously both these schools haven't been as successful as they have the last couple of years. I don't know. I'm probably, man, if I had to take a pick, I'm probably going to say Hawaii wins by like a point. I seriously think this might be a close game.
I think. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just both defensively both were not successful, so it might be a bit of a shootout. But also offensively, they weren't that great. But I feel like Hawaii has the better offense of the two, so I'm going to go Hawaii. I'll go with like a 31-30 win.
I'm kind of going blind on this because I don't know a ton on both of these teams. They're Hawaii's hasn't been really up there with the group of five powers the last several years. And then Stanford has been, very poor the last like 10 years. So I'm going to say Stanford gets this one just because they probably have more talent on their roster than Hawaii. And I'm going to say just barely, I'm going to say like a 24-20 game. Okay. That's the predictions. That's the show. You can reach us at you can reach us at haterradio.com for all of our articles. The UCLA ones up there, USC, USF, and Florida are all there. YouTube for all of our preview shows that we did for all four of those schools as well. This is the first show of the year. We've got many more to come all year. We're here every Sunday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So check us out. Find us on all the socials. Just type in Hater Radio, comes right up. Like literally, like now it's all there. When you type it in, we come right up. We're the first thing. We've got some momentum finally. So I just want to thank Ian for coming on again for this year. Ian, do you have anything else before we go?
Welcome to college football, Missouri State and Delaware.
Nice. Okay. So G5 Gibson, I'm Chris McLean. Enjoy these games. I'm glad we're back. And, this is going to be an exciting year. And we'll talk to you guys later.